My name is Arjun, and I come from a small village. My family didn't have much money. My father works as a farmer, and he earns just enough to buy food for us. My mother is a housewife, and she takes care of me and my younger sister. I always dreamed of a better life, one where I could take care of my parents, make them proud, and help them live without any worries. I wanted to be rich, to live a life where we didn't struggle to pay for things. I knew that to reach that dream, I needed to learn something big, something that would open doors for me. One day, when I was in middle school, a new boy joined our class. His name was Rohan, and he had come from the USA. Rohan was different from everyone else in my class. He wore stylish clothes, carried books in English, and spoke fluent English. When he spoke, his words flowed like a song, and it felt like he was from a whole other world. I was amazed by how easily he could talk and understand English. Watching him, I started to feel a deep desire, a burning wish to be like him, confident, smart, and fluent in English. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining myself speaking English confidently. In my dreams, I was standing in front of a big crowd, giving speeches in perfect English, and everyone was cheering. But when I woke up, I remembered my reality. I couldn't even make a simple English sentence without making mistakes. At school, I would sit in the back of the classroom and try to listen carefully whenever Rohan spoke. I wanted to learn every word he used, but it wasn't easy. The more I tried, the more I realized how far I had to go. I felt ashamed of myself. My classmates would laugh when I tried to speak English because my accent was strange and my words sounded wrong. But no matter how hard it felt, I didn't want to give up. I wanted to learn, even if it took me a long time. One day, my teacher, Mrs. Singh, noticed that I was quieter than usual. After class, she called me to her desk and asked, "Arjun, is something bothering you?" I hesitated, but then told her how much I wanted to speak English fluently. I told her that I wanted to improve my English to have a better future, but I didn't know where to start. I was tired of people laughing at me, but I didn't want to stop dreaming. Mrs. Singh smiled warmly and said, "Arjun, learning English is just like learning any other skill. You don't become a master overnight. You have to start with the basics and build slowly. I will help you, but you must promise me one thing, that you won't give up." I followed Mrs. Singh's advice to start with the basics and build step by step. At first, I focused on reading simple English. Mrs. Singh gave me a children's storybook written in easy English. The sentences were short, and the words were not difficult, so I could understand most of it. I would read each story, one sentence at a time, and if I didn't understand a word, I looked it up in my small dictionary. I kept a notebook where I wrote down every new word I found, with its meaning in my language. One of the hardest parts of learning English was remembering new words. Many times, I would learn a new word and then forget it the next day. Mrs. Singh gave me a tip for this. She said, "Arjun, if you use a new word in a sentence, it becomes easier to remember." So, every evening, I would go through my notebook, pick a few words, and write sentences with them. For example, if I learned the word achieve, I would write, "I want to achieve my goals," and say it out loud. Using words in my own sentences helped me remember them, and slowly, my vocabulary started to grow. One day, Mrs. Singh told me, Arjun, listening is as important as speaking. You need to listen to English every day. She recommended I listen to English news or watch English videos on simple topics. At first, I could hardly understand anything, but I didn't give up. I would listen carefully, trying to catch any words I knew. Even if I understood only a few words, I felt like I was making progress. I also started listening to English songs and tried to follow the lyrics. Mrs. Singh told me that even if I didn't understand all the words, my brain was getting used to the sounds and rhythm of English. Pronunciation was another big challenge for me. Sometimes, when I tried to speak, my words didn't sound right, and my friends laughed at my accent. It made me feel small, but I remembered what Mrs. Singh had said. Fluency and correct pronunciation come with practice. Don't worry about your accent right now. To improve my pronunciation, I would listen to English speakers and try to repeat after them. I paid close attention to how they moved their mouth and how they said each word. Slowly, my pronunciation got a little better, and I stopped worrying so much about my accent. One trick that really helped me was learning common phrases instead of single words. For example, instead of just learning the word good, I would learn phrases like good morning, good job, or good luck. Learning phrases made it easier to remember words, and it helped me speak more naturally. Mrs. Singh explained that English speakers often use phrases instead of single words, so it's helpful to learn in chunks. I started practicing phrases like, how are you? Thank you so much. And can you help me? Soon, these phrases became automatic for me, and I didn't need to think before saying them. As my reading improved, Mrs. Singh encouraged me to try reading more challenging material. She gave me a simple English newspaper and told me to read one article every day. The articles had harder words, but I enjoyed the challenge. If I didn't understand a word, I would write it down in my notebook and look it up later. I noticed that the more I read, the easier it became to understand new words in context. Mrs. Singh explained that reading different types of material, stories, articles, and even English advertisements, it helps improve vocabulary and understanding faster than just memorizing words. One of the hardest things for me was speaking English out loud. I was scared of making mistakes, but Mrs. Singh said, mistakes are part of learning. Speak out loud, even if you're alone. So, every morning, I would stand in front of the mirror and practice speaking to myself in English. I would introduce myself, talk about my day, or imagine having a conversation. At first, it felt strange, but over time, I grew more comfortable. Practicing in front of the mirror helped me gain confidence, and it felt like I was talking to a friend. There were days when I felt discouraged. I would try so hard, but sometimes I couldn't see any progress. I would think, why am I even doing this? Will I ever be fluent in English? But then I would remember my dream. I wanted to create a better life for my family, to have opportunities that would change our future. Whenever I felt like giving up, I reminded myself that this was just one small step on a long journey. I couldn't expect to reach my goal overnight, but if I took small steps every day, I would eventually get there. One day, Mrs. Singh gave me a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. She said, "This book will help you stay motivated and believe in yourself." I read one page every day and tried to understand its message. The book taught me that if I believed in myself and stayed positive, I could achieve anything. I also started reading other simple, motivational books, which helped me stay focused and kept me motivated to practice English every day. I realized that learning English wasn't something I could do once in a while. It needed to be part of my daily routine. I set aside at least 1 hour every day for English practice. During that time, I would read, write sentences with new words, listen to English audio, or speak out loud. By dedicating this time daily, I could see slow but steady improvement. Mrs. Singh always said, "Consistency is the key to success," and I was beginning to understand what she meant. At school, some of my classmates still laughed at me when I made mistakes. It hurt, but I tried to remember why I was doing this. I wanted to change my life and give my family a better future. Mrs. Singh told me, "Arjun, ignore the laughter. They laugh because they don't understand your dreams. Focus on your goal, and one day they'll see your success." Her words gave me strength, and I started to feel proud of my journey, even if it wasn't perfect. One day, I met a friend named Amit who also wanted to improve his English. We decided to practice together. Every day, we would spend time speaking to each other in English. Practicing with Amit made learning more fun, and we could correct each other's mistakes. Having a study partner kept me motivated, and it made the journey less lonely. Learning English was hard, and I often felt frustrated, but I kept telling myself every day I'm getting better, even if I can't see it yet. I learned to celebrate my small successes, like finishing a book or understanding a new word. I realized that learning is a journey, and I didn't have to be perfect all at once. Every small step was bringing me closer to my dream. I knew I was only beginning, but I had already come so far. My vocabulary was growing, my confidence was improving, and I was slowly becoming fluent. My dream of speaking English fluently was getting closer, and I felt a deep sense of pride and joy. As the days passed, I felt myself growing in confidence. I was learning more words, speaking better, and even beginning to understand English conversations. But there was still a long way to go. I wanted to sound natural, to be able to speak without stopping or stumbling. So, I began to focus on a few new methods Mrs. Singh taught me. One day, Mrs. Singh suggested I try watching English movies or TV shows with subtitles. She explained, "When you hear native speakers, you'll learn how they really speak, how they express emotions, use body language, and react." I was excited but nervous. I chose a simple English cartoon to start with, something with easy words and clear pronunciation. At first, it was hard. I could only understand a few words here and there, but I didn't give up. I'd watch each episode twice, first with subtitles, then without. I noticed that hearing the same words over and over helped me remember them. Over time, I started to understand more. Watching movies and shows became fun, and it helped me with listening and pronunciation. I even picked up common phrases like, "What's up?" "No problem," and "I'm on my way." These little phrases added to my speaking style, and I felt like I was starting to sound more natural. One day, I decided to challenge myself by using English outside of practice. I went to a small shop in the village and decided to try speaking to the shopkeeper in English. I greeted him, "Hello, how are you today?" He looked surprised, but smiled and answered in Hindi. I continued, "I need some milk and bread, please." I could feel people around me watching, but I kept going. The shopkeeper handed me what I needed, and I thanked him, saying, "Thank you very much." After that day, I made it a habit to practice English in small ways like this: ordering food, greeting strangers, even asking for directions. These little moments built my confidence, and I felt proud that I was using my English skills in the real world. Sometimes I would make mistakes while speaking. For example, once I said, "He don't have a book," instead of, "He doesn't have a book." My friend corrected me, and I felt embarrassed, but Mrs. Singh encouraged me. She said, "Mistakes are proof that you're trying. Each mistake you make is a step forward." From then on, I kept a special notebook where I wrote down every mistake I made and the correct way to say it. This helped me avoid making the same mistakes again, and my grammar started improving as a result. I realized that if I wanted to speak correctly, I needed to understand English grammar better. Mrs. Singh recommended I start with the basics, understanding tenses present, past and future, sentence structure, and parts of speech like nouns, verbs, adjectives, etc. She gave me simple exercises to practice each concept. For example, I am going to school. Present continuous, I went to school yesterday. Dot past simple, I will go to school tomorrow. Dot future simple. Each day, I practiced these sentences and gradually added more complex structures. As I understood the rules of English better, my confidence grew. Grammar helped me feel more secure when speaking, and my sentences started sounding more correct and natural. Once I had improved my reading skills, Mrs. Singh encouraged me to try reading books in English that I enjoyed. She said, "If you read things you're interested in, you'll learn faster because you'll want to keep reading." So, I picked a simple novel, a story about a boy who dreamed big, just like me. Every evening, I would read a few pages and let myself get lost in the story. I was surprised at how much I could understand, and I enjoyed discovering new words. I would look up the meanings and add them to my vocabulary notebook. This way, reading became both a learning tool and a hobby. My love for reading grew, and it became one of the most enjoyable parts of my English journey. As my confidence grew, Mrs. Singh suggested I join an English-speaking group. There was a small gathering every Saturday where people in the village practiced English together. At first, I was nervous. Speaking in front of people felt different from practicing alone or with friends. But I knew that if I wanted to improve, I needed to push myself out of my comfort zone. At the meetings, we would take turns speaking about different topics, sometimes our dreams, other times current events. Each time, I challenged myself to speak clearly and confidently, even if I made mistakes. Being part of this group gave me a chance to practice, learn from others, and improve my public speaking skills. It was scary, but it was also thrilling to see my progress. One day, Mrs. Singh told me, if you want to sound like a native speaker, try learning some idioms and expressions. They make your speech sound more interesting. She gave me a list of common idioms, like break the ice, a blessing in disguise, and bite the bullet. Each day, I would pick one idiom, learn its meaning, and try to use it in a sentence. For example, if I was nervous before speaking, I would say, I need to bite the bullet and do this. Learning these expressions made my English sound more colorful and expressive, and I felt like I was connecting to the language in a deeper way. To improve my writing, Mrs. Singh asked me to start keeping a journal. Every night, I would write a few lines about my day, my dreams, or anything on my mind. At first, I struggled to express myself, but with time, it became easier. I found that writing helped me organize my thoughts and practice new words and grammar structures. Each week, Mrs. Singh would read my journal and help me correct any mistakes. I was proud to see my writing improve, and it also helped me remember vocabulary and grammar better. Writing became another tool in my journey, helping me express myself confidently in English. Mrs. Singh then gave me a new challenge, preparing short speeches. She said, Arjun, speaking in front of others will build your confidence and fluency. I would choose a topic, write a few lines, and practice it over and over. I started with simple topics like my family, my favorite book, and my dream. At first, I would stumble and forget my lines, but with each practice, I got better. Eventually, I delivered my first full speech in front of the Saturday group. I was nervous, but everyone clapped and encouraged me. It was a proud moment, and it made me believe in myself even more. There were days when learning English felt like climbing a huge mountain. I would feel tired and wonder if I would ever become fluent. But whenever I felt like this, I reminded myself of my dream, to change my life, to help my family, to create opportunities. I remembered why I had started and how far I had come. I would tell myself, if I keep going, one day I'll look back and be proud of every step I took. Mrs. Singh also reminded me that learning English wasn't a race. She said, it's a journey, Arjun. Every small step brings you closer to your goal. Her words always lifted my spirit, and I stayed determined to keep moving forward, no matter how tough it got. As I gained more experience, Mrs. Singh encouraged me to practice speaking in front of larger groups. She said, Arjun, if you can speak confidently to strangers, you will no longer have any fear of speaking English. This was hard for me, but I accepted the challenge. I volunteered to speak at village events, giving small talks, and even leading discussions on topics like education and community progress. At first, my hands would shake, and I would feel my heart pounding, but I kept going. Every time I spoke, my confidence grew. I would prepare my speech, practice in front of the mirror, and remember to speak slowly and clearly. I found that people listened to me, encouraged me, and cheered for me. Soon, English felt as comfortable as my own language, and I realized that speaking publicly was a powerful way to build fluency. Learning English was no longer something I did only when I felt motivated. It became a part of my daily routine. I would wake up, practice speaking in front of the mirror, read a book, and listen to English audio as I did chores. Mrs. Singh taught me that consistency was key. She said, just like water shapes a rock over time, daily practice shapes your skills. To keep myself on track, I created a timetable that included reading, speaking, listening, and writing exercises. I didn't wait for motivation. I created discipline. Even if I felt tired, I would do something small, like reviewing vocabulary or reading a few pages. Over time, this routine strengthened my commitment and made learning English a natural part of my life. To make English feel even more natural, I began using it in everyday tasks. When I went to the market, I would silently describe everything I saw in English. When I helped my family with farm work, I would name every tool and task in English. Mrs. Singh encouraged this, explaining, "The more you use English, the more it becomes part of your thinking." I even taught some basic English phrases to my family members. It felt amazing to be able to share my knowledge with them. This practice helped me remember words better and strengthened my ability to think in English. Mrs. Singh also recommended that I keep a journal in English, writing down my thoughts, dreams, and daily experiences. She told me, a journal is like a conversation with yourself. It helps you express feelings and builds confidence in writing. Every night, I would write a few lines about my day. At first, it was hard to find the right words, but gradually, it became easier. Writing daily helped me expand my vocabulary, organize my thoughts, and remember new words and grammar. I would look back on my old entries and see how much I had improved. Seeing my progress on paper gave me a sense of achievement and motivated me to keep pushing forward. Mrs. Singh taught me the power of goal setting. She said, "Arjun, if you have a clear vision, you'll know where to focus." I set a long-term goal of becoming fluent in English, but I also broke it down into smaller steps. I created weekly goals, like learning 20 new words, finishing a chapter of a book, or delivering a short speech. Each time I achieved a small goal, I rewarded myself with something simple, like a treat or a break. These small steps made the bigger journey less overwhelming. Over time, I realized that each step, no matter how small, was bringing me closer to my dreams. To truly understand English, Mrs. Singh suggested learning about English-speaking cultures. She explained that understanding their way of life, idioms, and traditions would make me more comfortable with the language. I began reading about life in countries like the United States, the UK, and Australia. I watched documentaries and learned about their festivals, food, and traditions. This immersion helped me understand not just the language, but the culture behind it. I began using phrases and expressions that are commonly used by native speakers. Understanding culture made English feel more relatable and helped me connect with the language on a deeper level. Mrs. Singh encouraged me to read the stories of people who had learned English as a second language and achieved great success. I found stories of individuals who came from small towns, learned English, and went on to become successful teachers, writers, and even business leaders. One story, in particular, inspired me. A young man from a rural area who struggled to learn English, but eventually became a motivational speaker. Reading these stories made me realize that if they could overcome their challenges, I could too. Their journeys became my motivation, reminding me that success was possible if I stayed determined. As I progressed, Mrs. Singh introduced me to the idea of thinking in English. She explained, "If you can train your mind to think in English, speaking will become natural." I began by describing simple things around me in English. The sky is blue. I'm walking to the market. Gradually, I tried thinking about my goals, dreams, and even my worries in English. At first, it was challenging, but with time, it became easier. Thinking in English helped me respond faster during conversations and made the language feel like a part of me. There were days when I felt discouraged, days when I thought I would never be good enough. But I learned to celebrate even the smallest wins. Mrs. Singh would remind me, "Arjun, look at how far you've come. Don't focus on what's left. Celebrate every step." I would celebrate when I learned a new word, completed a book, or delivered a speech. These small celebrations kept me motivated and reminded me of my progress. Positive thinking became a habit, and I learned to see every challenge as an opportunity to grow. Years of dedication, discipline, and hard work had transformed me. I could now speak, read, write, and understand English with ease. My confidence soared. No longer was I the boy who hid from English. I had become someone who could communicate with the world. When I spoke English, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. I was now able to apply for better jobs, communicate with people from different parts of the world, and even help others in my village who wanted to learn English. My dream was to lift my family out of poverty, and now I had the tool to do it. After mastering English, I felt a calling to help others who were struggling like I once was. I began organizing free English classes in my village, sharing the methods I had learned from Mrs. Singh. I taught my fellow villagers that learning English was not impossible. It only took time, patience, and a strong will. Seeing others' progress gave me a new sense of purpose. I realized that learning English wasn't just about me. It was about giving back to my community and helping others achieve their dreams. To everyone reading my story, I want you to know that learning English can change your life. It might seem hard at first, but with patience and persistence, you can achieve fluency. Remember to stay consistent, practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Set small goals. Break down your journey into manageable steps. Use English daily. Speak, write, read, and think in English as much as you can. Learn from mistakes. Every mistake is a lesson. Don't let them discourage you. Stay positive and celebrate wins. Recognize your progress, no matter how small. Today I'm proud to say that I didn't let poverty or lack of resources hold me back. I took every opportunity to grow, learned from my failures, and stayed focused on my dreams. Now, I stand here, confident and capable, ready to face the world and fulfill my dreams. Learning English taught me that anything is possible if you believe in yourself and never give up. And remember, your journey is unique. Embrace it, and one day, you'll look back and be proud of every step you took.